Minister, workers, students, pensioners, renters, single parents, they're just sick and tired of the false promises, the failed plans and the half measures to deal with a crushing cost of living crisis and, most importantly, with a housing disaster that people are facing in this country that gets worse by the day. And that is why this Saturday at 1 o'clock in Parnell Square and in 5 other locations across the country, we hope to see, in the Cost of Living Coalition, thousands and thousands of people come out on the streets to express their fury at your failure to deal with this cost of living crisis and with this absolutely disastrous housing crisis. And yesterday, as if we needed reminding, the President of this country had to come out and call you to account for what he described absolutely rightly as the great, great failure of this government and this republic to deal with the housing disaster that you are presiding over. And he said that the job of a government is to build homes.
Deputy, there's an honourable
Come on.
You do not become involved in the analysis or debate on the statements of the President. I'm not saying
my time is ticking.
I can't. We'll stop the clock then. I'm not saying we can't make reference to it, but we don't need to quote him. We all know what the man said. So please.
Yeah, he would be happy to quote him.
Please.
Why is it that we hear that government ministers are saying that the President crossed the line or that it was even embarrassing? This is government ministers when he simply expressed...
Sorry, Deputy.
It's incredible. This is incredible.
No, it's not incredible.
Yeah.
There are separation of powers. We don't drag the President in this chamber into any controversy. Please just respect...
He's been referenced already on a couple of occasions.
Please.
Two people referenced him and nobody else was pulled up.
Referencing is fine.
Nobody else was pulled up.
Referencing is fine. But you're trying to elaborate on that.
It's okay for the ministers to elaborate on this.
It's not okay for anyone in here to elaborate. Let me be very clear about that, and the same rule applies to everyone.
I was delighted to quote the President earlier. I think his remarks were absolutely correct.
Well, I think, Count Corla and Minister, that when he referred to the poor law system that we thought we'd left behind us as still being present, he was obviously referring to what is truly embarrassing, the fact that we have 10,000 families and households and individuals, and worst of all, children, in emergency accommodation, a situation that has got worse and worse month after month under the auspices of this government. And of course, the 136,000 families are on social housing waiting lists for a decade and sometimes 2 decades. The estimated 136,000 properties that are vacant, often being sat on by investors and speculators that this government allowed to run riot and destroy the housing sector, but benefit from the misery of tens of thousands of people who can't afford the obscene rents, who can't afford the obscene house prices, and who are in many cases then driven into homelessness. So, Minister, wasn't the President right when he described this as a disaster? And aren't the people, the workers, the students, the pensioners, the renters and those who are going to come out on the streets this Saturday to protest, to say they've had enough, are they not right too? To be fed up, sick and tired of this government's failure to do the most basic thing, which is put an affordable roof over the heads of the people of this country?
Thank you, Deputy. Can I just point out before the Minister responds, it is inappropriate to analyse or critique any statement made by the President here in this House.
The government absolutely appreciates the challenges, the anxiety, the stress, the trauma that so many face as they look for an affordable home, as they look for a home which they can confident they'll be able to afford the rent on in the future, all those who are waiting, who have been on social housing lists for so many years, that are looking for the opportunity to have a roof over their head that they can call home. We absolutely appreciate this and are determined to make progress on it. But this is the reason why we have such investment by the government going directly into building more homes on state land by the state through local authorities. It is the reason why we have plans in place for this year that will deliver up to 9,000 social homes across our country. These are social homes that are now being built. They're being built across Dublin, across many other cities in our country at the moment to respond back to the need and to the issues that we know so many are experiencing at the moment. And if I look at the other issues that Deputy Boyd Barrett there referred to, he referred to where we are with homelessness, and we do acknowledge that we are seeing an increase on where we are in homeless levels within our country. Every family, every child, every person who's homeless at the moment is one too many, and we are doing all we can to respond back to that and to make a difference to it. But it is the reason why in Housing for All again, we have over €100 million set aside to make a difference, to put in place the interventions, to get families, to get children out of emergency accommodation into their own home, to give them the accommodation that they need. It is the reason why we are so committed to the public, the social and the affordable housing plans that I've outlined in questions from deputies today. And yes, I do appreciate that when we as TDs are dealing with families who are homeless, who are at risk of being homeless, it gives us an insight into the sheer worry, concern, anxiety they have about a future that is so uncertain. But the answer to that is building more homes through our local authorities, and that is what is happening at the moment. And we will spare no effort, Deputy Boyd Barrett, in continuing to ensure that the local authority housing targets that we have are met. We're seeing clear signs of progress being made. The more homes commenced, the more homes that are planning permission, and the more homes that were completed over the last 12 months, which will provide a foundation after the effects of a pandemic in which our construction sector was closed for so long, to make quicker, to make more effective progress on the housing needs that you've described, that I accept are real, but I'd argue to you that government is also making progress and responding back to.
Talks, plans, promises, but the reality is the situation just gets worse. More people homeless, more people threatened with eviction, rents rising to obscene levels and still going higher, house prices, obscene levels, still going higher, families who've done nothing wrong being evicted, students who can't get accommodation that is anything even approaching affordable. It just gets worse. And that's why I invite people who are fed up, and I think the majority of people are fed up and think this is a disaster, to get out on the streets this Saturday and march and force this government finally to listen. And frankly, you see, you're not telling the truth when you say that the local authorities are building more public housing. I just got the figures on Oireachtas down of the social housing they're going to build for the next 4 years. Out of 2,300 houses, about 10% of those are going to be directly built by the councils. The rest, they are relying on private developers. This is what's the truth of what's going on, and anybody just has to look around the city to see the apartment blocks going up. They're not being built by councils, they're built by investors charging obscene rents and prices. That is the truth, Minister.
Minister.
And those homes will then be available for use by the local authorities, which you know is the truth, Deputy Boyd Barrett. Deputy Boyd Barrett knows well that the houses that he has just referenced there would then be used by the local authority in his area to respond back to the housing needs, to clear the housing list. That's a fact, Deputy Boyd Barrett. You're the one who comes in here and makes the case about the truth. The House is aware, and any deputy who's aware in trying to respond back to the housing needs within their own constituency knows that the houses that are being built by private developers, by interests, a share of them is then used by the local authority to house people. And Deputy, you talked about talk, You talked about commitments. You talked about the time for speaking being over. But there's the reality of 977 homes being built in Dundrum, of 817 homes being built in Balbriggan, of 345 homes being built in Skerries, of 219 homes built in Naas by the Land Development Agency. These are planning applications that are in to build the homes that we need, while our local authorities are directly building thousands of homes across the country in this year to make progress on the great challenge that we know faster progress needs to be made on.
Deputy Michael McNamara.